Age, I will pass the mic over to you, Adrian Prado, Food for All New Brunswick Steering Committee co-chair. Extraordinaire, I have to add.
Thanks, Jill. So welcome everyone to the Food and Climate Talk. And first of all, I'd like to invite you to turn off your video if you'd like to speak but don't want to be visible in the recording. Also, if you'd like to remain anonymous, feel free to rename yourself to something fun that would be anonymous. We'll be recording this session, which will capture the speakers only. And I'll give you a few seconds to do that, to change your names and turn off your cameras if you'd like to. For interpretation, you can click the little globe below on your toolbar, and you can choose the language of your choice. Okay, climate change is the most urgent crisis that we're facing as a global community, and food can play a big role in making positive change. How are communities and initiatives bringing a climate lens into food work? We have the translation here. So, le changement climatique est la crise la plus urgente à laquelle nous devons faire face en tant que communauté mondiale, et l'alimentation peut jouer un rôle important pour apporter un changement positif. Comment les communautés et les initiatives intègrent-elles la dimension climatique dans leur travail et l'alimentation? Donc, on va avoir des présentations. We're going to have some presentations from a number of people, so 3 people here. And so we'll start with Claire May, who lives in Fredericton and has been engaged in local food system work since 2012. Presently with Hayes Farm and sitting on the board of the National Farmers Union in New Brunswick, she began her own market garden operation in Gagetown in 2020 and is committed to exploring the role that we as individuals play in food and the food and climate crisis. Go ahead, Claire.
Merci beaucoup et bonjour à tous. Ça fait plaisir d'être ici ce matin. I am going to speak in English, but as we go along, if there's questions in French or whatever, I know we have time for that at the end. I can certainly understand questions in French. And I think that's the same for the rest of our panel. So I'm very happy to be here today and be speaking alongside Mario and Suzanne. And I think kind of the themes that all 3 of us are going to speak on are very much intertwined and very much connected, and all play a part in our relationship with food and climate. So like it was offered in my introduction, I have been working in local food systems since 2012. And that start was in local food retail and distribution. And that realm gave me a really good introduction and connection to a lot of different farmers in the province. And to the farming lifestyle. And so through that work in retail and food distribution, I gradually moved closer and closer to the agriculture in terms of boots on the ground and dirt under my fingernails and that kind of thing, which is where my work, how I came to work with Hayes Farm, as well as my own market garden in Gagetown. And so by coming to, before I continue anymore, I would very much like to acknowledge where I am joining you from, and that is the unceded and surrendered territory of the Wolastoqey people along the beautiful and bountiful river. Sorry for forgetting that. Thank you very much. So by coming to agriculture and by finding my way where I am now, by getting to know a community of farmers, it really gave me the opportunity to understand and appreciate the role of the individual farmer, the family farm and the small scale farm, and the role and the positive impact that those individual decisions and actions can have. So the work that we do at Hayes Farm, which is what we call a community teaching farm. So it's a nonprofit organization that focuses on education. And that education is in place. So we are a working farm We grow annual vegetable crops on about 1 acre, and we're always working to fill the extra nooks and crannies with other edible food crops, perennials mostly, nut crops we're getting into, but mostly fruits. And so we strive to offer a no to low barrier entry for anyone to kind of experience the farm and food from its source, to see where they fit within that food system. So along with teaching, focusing very heavily on the practical skills of food production in this climate, we also talk a lot about the social and environmental context of food production. So we are all about food sovereignty and autonomy. And so food sovereignty, I'm sure that most everyone here is quite familiar with that concept, which goes above food security. So not only having enough nourishment, but also having a say in what it is that you're eating, how it's come to you, how it was grown, who grew it, culturally appropriate food, and all those kind of nuanced pieces around food security. So by focusing on both the skills and the information and context around food production, we hope to empower people to make informed decisions about the food that they eat. So of course, the food system is severely impacted by climate change. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere by chasing false solutions, which in my mind are very focused on overcoming kind of the latest climate disaster. So we could talk about fires, we could talk about flooding, landslides, early frosts or late frosts, all these kind of very impactful and often very devastating events. But instead of trying to keep up with these events, I think we're going to be much further along by looking backwards to holistic practices that really benefit people and planet. So I think the damage has been done by taking control. So when we talk about food sovereignty, this is kind of the control that I'm talking about, taking control out of the hands of the many and putting it in the hands of the few. And those few often have very deep pockets and are able to kind of pay their way out of trouble without making meaningful changes to the way that they operate. So I think that each one of us, and what I'm really about, and the realm that I try to operate in part because I get very overwhelmed by thinking on such a global scale, is really about the role that we as individuals can play and the impact that we can have by looking at our own individual actions. Excuse me. So I'm going to focus in a little bit on a few concepts and a few practices that we can start to think about in order to change our habits and to make those positive impacts. And the first thing that I want to mention is that it's not hard to find stats or stories, and you don't have to look very far to find that small farms are feeding the world. So there's a bit of a dialogue and perhaps an illusion that industrial or corporate agriculture is feeding the world. And I would argue that that is contrary to the case. Excuse me while I fumble with my notes. So I want to speak a little bit about both the community and the individual actions that can have a positive impact on food and climate. So for those of us that are directly involved in agriculture, which I'm gonna label the farm community, and I'm gonna just talk about one kind of big concept that arguably is not just a concept but a way of life, and that is agroecology. And that term, agroecology, is a holistic approach to food production that takes into consideration food sovereignty, economical sustainability, social justice, and healthy agricultural ecosystems. And I know that Mario is going to delve more into the agricultural ecosystems and the importance of soil, which is an absolutely vital resource. And so that's kind of one big concept that I feel is very important for the farm community to understand and to put into practice. But for those of us that are not directly involved in agriculture, there's definitely lots that we can do to start to make those positive impacts. And I'm certain that everybody here is already aware of lots of these things and is making some very conscious decisions. So looking at a community of individuals as opposed to the farm community, I want to give a shout out to my pal Amy Floyd, who published a list via the NB Media Co-op earlier this year, citing 40 ways to improve your food sovereignty this season. And there's a lot of things on that list that are easy steps and that directly address our role in climate change. So number one, I'm going to pitch is eating in season. So getting to know what grows well in this climate and eating those things when they are in season. And that does include storage crops. So of course, being late November at this point, we have a lot of things that have come out of the field and that we are going to store through the winter that are going to continue feeding us through till March, April, May, hopefully. And so those things I would consider eating in season. Buying local or growing your own. There's lots of us that don't have the capacity to grow our own. And so there's lots that can be done on a very small scale, even in a balcony or in pots. But if that capacity is not there to grow your own, think about buying local. And that the most direct way to make that connection with local food is often through connecting directly with farmers. But a lot of our local retailers around the province also carry foods produced by local growers. The next point that I'd like to offer is about sharing and saving seed. So something that is very important to our work at Hayes Farm and how we choose the crops that we grow is looking at native varieties. So crops or varieties that are Indigenous to this place, that are well adapted to the climate here, and that require less intensive management. So they're well adapted to our growing conditions here and tend to grow well in this place. And so looking to save the seeds from those varieties and share them with others will help kind of expand those things through a region. Reducing packaging is a pretty easy one, or maybe I shouldn't say easy because it's not easy necessarily to get product with lesser packaging, but kind of being conscious of that and making choices and making decisions to avoid packaging where possible. Two more things, avoiding food waste. And that's a kind of taking what you need and avoiding scarcity by doing so. Which is one way to kind of shift our thinking there is that to compost something. So think about maybe you made too much food, you have leftovers 4 days old and you're not sure about eating them, so you want to compost them. And I think that is not waste at all. I think that compost product is something that then goes to feed the soil and feed the next kind of generation of plant life, and has a lot of value in that. And knowing that food waste that goes into the landfill does end up emitting a lot of methane, producing methane, which is something that we very much want to avoid. And the last thing that I'm going to offer is the suggestion of getting to know your farmer, visiting a farm, volunteering on a farm. Most of the time, farmers are keen to show you what they're doing and to tell you about how they grow their food and things that they're passionate about. We do have a provincial open farm day that happens every year in September. but I don't want y'all to wait, 8 months or 10 months to do that. So hopefully in the new year, or even through the winter, we'll get to know some farmers and start to make those connections a little bit stronger. So after all of that, I would just very much like to stress that concept of agroecology, even if you are not directly involved in agriculture, it connects us to the land and to the community. And it's these connections, both with land and others, that's going to empower us to contribute to meaningful collective action. So what we do matters and what you do matters. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Claire. We'll be able to get to questions afterwards, but we'll kind of move on to Mario. So Mario is an artist. Mario Doiron is an artist, gardener, and environmentalist living in St. Paul, New Brunswick, where he runs a small self-sufficient hobby farm. He raises chickens and geese, makes compost for his garden, and manages coppice wood lot for sustainable firewood production. At present, he serves his community as the food security coordinator with the Kent Community Inclusion Network. Thanks, Mario, for participating, and yeah, we'll get on to your talk.
It's all good. Hey, folks, how's it going this morning? Beautiful day. So here we go. Yeah, I work with the Kent Community Inclusion Network. And so as an organization, a nonprofit here in Kent County, we manage, we help out different nonprofits around the community, including 9 different community gardens, which includes 3 First Nations communities. So, we're working really hard to try to get, build up gardening skills in our communities and match senior or experienced gardeners with beginners so that everybody can really advance and get more productive in our gardens. Here in Kent County, it's a rural region. So, the economics of rural areas are a little bit different than in cities. So for us here, for food security, we found that the best strategy for us would be the low-lying fruit of gardening at home, community gardens, and just increasing the supply of food locally, so that folks can take a hand in their own nutrition. So one of the projects that we're working here this year is a short film about, it's going to be around 35 minutes long, called La nature du jardin. So this film will be in French with English subtitles. Most of our community here is predominantly Francophone. So we're going to be exploring different concepts of organic gardening, soil building, and all such wonderful things. So if I can go ahead and share my screen here, I got a couple of stills from the film, and I can explain some of the things that we're doing and how we're proceeding with trying to get that built up. All right, so let's see if I can get this. All right. So here we go, La nature du jardin. So here in this first slide here, we're looking at a community garden in St. Mary. This community was having some issues with their water table drying up during droughts in the summertime. So here we built an earthworks. We basically made level ditches and mounded up the topsoil in order to create our garden beds. And this, because it's level, it's intercepting all of the rainwater, all the surface water that falls on that lot of land. So we're not wasting a single drop of water. And so that significantly reduces our water usage. So we're not using well water in order to water the garden. We're using rainwater that falls on the garden, and also we're collecting rainwater coming off of the roof of a house, or a little shed next door, a little metal roof shed. So we make use of that, and if you notice here in the walkways, it's all full of wood chips. So mulch and level ditches will hold and retain water and let it soak into the soil where it's needed. Now, the garden beds themselves are above grade, so they never really get waterlogged at the root level of the plants. So it creates a much more stable water source. The soil stays moist most of the time, and what water it does get doesn't get lost through evaporation. And you'll notice that the garden beds themselves are very intensely planted. Basically, we've got 4 rows in a 3.5-foot wide garden bed. So instead of taking up like 12 feet, it's taking up less than 4 feet, right? So we can grow more food in less square footage using these methods here. So here's a second demonstration that I did at the Kokang Community Garden, where I showed the difference between tilled soil, which we think is a better soil environment for growing plants. I compared tilled soil to organic soil. So the bread signifies or symbolizes the performance of organic soil that has retained all of its structure. Soil organisms will go through, create tunnels, and exude different organic compounds that will hold the structure and conglomerate the soil particles together and hold it in place. Well, but powder, dry powder is hydrophobic. So when we till our soil and we turn it into a beautiful, nice, fine powder that seemingly will let seeds grow well and roots grow well in there, the water doesn't get into the fine powdered soil. So as you can see the big mess on the table, I poured water on the flour, I poured water on the bread. The water on the bread just absorbed immediately and got retained into the bread, but on the powdery flour, it just made a mess and flew all over the place. So this shows how physically tilled soil is extremely vulnerable to erosion, nutrient loss, and it just doesn't work like we think it works. So there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to gardening, and a lot of the practices that we use, especially on a broad acre, are extremely destructive. And that's why we see rivers getting choked with sediment and excessive nutrients. And it's having extreme impacts on aquatic habitats and the quality of water and just the environment in general. It's just wholesale deteriorating our very valuable agricultural soils. The soil loss on these gardens are extreme. So on this slide here, we're taking a look at me taking some soil samples in a few different gardens, where I compared regularly tilled soil. Take a look at the pictures on the right. The top one will show the small little clods of soil. Well, that's tilled. The one in the middle has not been tilled for 1 year. So it's had a chance for soil organisms to go in and do their job and glue things together. And you can see, I don't know how good your resolution is, but there's a little tunnel in there in one of the center little clods of soil. So that's the tunnel created by a worm. We don't find those retaining their structure in the tilled soil. And matter of fact, there's very few worms in the tilled soil. And the clod on the right, the larger clod with darker soil, is my no-till garden soil from 10 years of soil building, adding compost to the surface, never turning the soil. So the organisms have had time to create tunnels. Plant roots have had time to accumulate, decompose, create little channels of spongy little channels that bring water down nice and deep. So that soil is very functional. So basically, this test here is a slate test. We'll take a little piece of that clod of soil, put it in a bottle, suspend it on a little piece of cage, and just see how the soil will behave in still water. Tilled soil has a tendency to have little bits of soil just trickle down like a gentle snow and just completely end up deteriorating and falling apart. The 1 year no-till soil deteriorated only half as much as the fully tilled soil. Of course, the no-till soil, except for the few little bits of soil that got knocked off when I dropped the sample in the water, everything stayed clear. The water stayed nice and clear and transparent, and there was no sediment loss. There was no nutrient degradation. Everything stayed nice and clear and clean, and the clod of soil barely notice the fact that it's submerged in water. It didn't deteriorate at all. So just in my film, I want to show why no-till works, why ecological minded systems are functional. How do they work? Why do they work? So that regular folks, and I'm using regular everyday language. I'm not using fancy language in this film because I want everybody to be able to understand these complex ideas and systems in a more simple way, so that it can be applied in people's gardens at home. We talk about compost, and it looks like I forgot the M in my mulch, so it's an ulch today. So sorry about that, folks. But yeah, so I demonstrate how to make a garden, how to make, I should say, a compost pile, and how to use it. So not everybody has a capacity. Like myself at home, I use a lot of chicken manure. I have a large amounts of chicken manure that I can use for composting, but not everybody has that. So in this garden, I'm working with an elderly widow in my community, a very lovely and wonderful person. But she's kind of on her own to take care of her garden, and she doesn't have like a spry 19-year-old who can come in and do all of the heavy lifting in her yard. She has to do things herself. So here what we did is we built the compost pile directly in her garden to reduce the amount of labor she has to do to distribute that compost. While compost pile is being made, is decomposing, there's leaching of nutrients below the compost pile. So why fertilize a pile of soil that's half an acre away from your garden bed? Let all of that goodness stay in your garden, and then you get more out of your compost pile that way. So here she didn't have manures or anything like that, so we just made compost out of two basic ingredients: fall leaves and mowed grass, freshly mowed grass. So the grass would act as our greens or our nitrogen-rich substance, and the fall leaves represented the carbon component of the compost pile. So compost could be made out of anything that was once alive. And the point is, we want to take all of that organically bioavailable carbon and put it as much of it in the soil as possible. Once it's in the soil, it retains water, it retains nutrients, and it creates an environment for soil-borne organisms to do their job and feed your plants. As gardeners, we were misled to believe that we need to feed our plants. We don't. We just need to feed our soil. The soil organisms will feed our plants and give them everything they need in order to be healthy. A healthy plant is less vulnerable to pests and diseases. So that's one of the very important things that we try to attain here. We want to have healthy plants that will themselves resist pests and diseases. So healthy soil will give you that. It creates, it has a lot of nutrients available. All of the organisms in soil are made up of all the micronutrients that your plant needs while they do their biological processes, and they exude and they excrete all of their little goodness. Well, it takes all of those nutrients from their biology, from their metabolisms, and puts it into the soil where the plants will have it available to them. Chemical fertilizers try to undercut all of that and go straight to just providing basically what amounts to vitamin pills. So it's the difference between organic gardening and our industrial agriculture. Industrial agriculture is kind of like just like feeding you hormones and pills and all kinds of stuff and try to keep you alive, while a natural ecological garden is more just healthy living, good diet and good nutrition, and a healthy environment, right? That will make a plant grow strong. It makes people grow strong and healthy. So that's what we're kind of trying to encourage people to implement into their gardening. Enriching soil with carbon is actually atmospheric carbon. So we're actually sequestering carbon when we're enriching our garden soil. So as long as it doesn't get tilled, it'll stay in your soil. And it just makes gardening a lot simpler, a lot easier. If you use earthworks to retain water, you don't have to water as much. If you mulch it, you're not going to lose much water, so the plants are not going to be as stressed during heat. If you have a carbon-rich and a nutrient-rich soil, living soil, it just feeds your plants and gives them a stable environment to grow in, and they fulfill their life cycle with vigor and strength, and the nutrient content of those vegetables are much higher than they would be in depleted soils, for instance, that basically a plant is just given just what it needs in order to grow big and fast and strong, but it leaves them very vulnerable to pests and diseases. Reduced costs. So people are gardening in order to reduce their grocery bill, and so that they can afford other things, right? Like poor folks, I think it was mentioned before that your grocery budget is the first thing that you're going to hit if you have a budget deficiency in a month. So sometimes you'll cut out on some of your grocery bills in order to pay the electric bill. Well, gardening, you can grow the food that you would have bought otherwise, and now you can pay your electric bill, and you might have some money left over to go out and buy some of the luxuries like beef or a broccoli or cauliflower, which are selling reasonably expensive right now. And reduction in manpower in the labor in your garden. So once you set up your garden in an ecological sense, it works for you while you're not there. Your worms are tilling. The worms are moving nutrients up and down. They're feeding your plants, and they're living in the roots of your plants exactly where they need to be in order to provide everything your plant needs. Birds will come into your garden and eat your pests. If you noticed before, the terrace gardens there with the little ditches, the level ditches, sometimes they get full of water. That'll attract bugs, and the bugs will attract birds. So you have an air force coming in and doing your pest control. You don't have to stand out there with shoot all kinds of poisons on your food to try to keep the bugs away. Your birds are happy to do that for you and provide some of their manures as they're going along with phosphorus and other wonderful nutrients that your plants need. It brings it all in. Nature provides everything you need to live well if we learn to work in harmony with natural processes. So this is kind of what we're trying to get to. At home, I garden on a $150 budget for seeds and materials every year, and I can save. It helps me save around $5,000 worth of grocery bills, and with that savings, it just makes life a lot easier. I have right now my freezers are full of food. I've got about 16 months worth of food piled up right now, so I'm food secure right now. And I think a lot more families who live in the country. New Brunswick is a very rural province. This is attainable for a lot of families. There's a lot of work to set it up, but once you have set up a garden, permanent garden, it's just a simple matter of, in the spring, I pull the tarps off of my garden beds. There's no weeds. It's already enriched. I just pull the tarps off and plant. So my springtime is busy planting my plants. Summertime is very little maintenance. I basically neglect it until fall, start to harvest. And the fall is you're very busy just harvesting and processing and preserving your food for the winter. And, it's a very stable and very simple lifestyle in order to produce a lot of the food that your family would need, and the best, highest quality food that you can get. There's 0 kilometers, there's no packaging, there's no travel costs or expenses, and it's very, very, very attainable. So this is the film we're putting together. It's funded by the Environmental Trust Fund, and I expect to have this ready to release in mid to late December for some showings and some presentations in schools and gardening groups all over the province. So how am I doing for time?
I think we're nearing the end of your time, Mayo.
Good.
Jill, if you want to
Kind of good.
So yeah, maybe we'll end it there. Thanks so much for that presentation, and maybe we can move on to Suzanne Fournier. So Okay, so Suzanne Fournier is the Executive Director of the National Farmers Union of New Brunswick, a nonprofit accredited farm organization. The NFUNB promotes policies that aim at to revitalize agriculture in New Brunswick on a local, national, and international level. The NFU advocates alternative structures and government policies that resist corporate control of food. With farmers and consumers, the NFU works to encourage vibrant rural communities, environmentally sustainable practices, and the production of safe, wholesome food. Suzanne is chronically ill and lives in Western New Brunswick with her 2 dogs. So Suzanne, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'll start by saying that I live and work on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqey, and Penobscot people. I'm going to talk a little bit about the high level and policy sides of food and climate. We've grown food as humans for almost 1,000 years. We've practiced agricultural practices, but it's only really in the last 100 that we've seen environmental impacts caused by farming. And that's really been because of a shift to maximum export, maximum production, maximum input, and maximum emission models, which we call industrial agricultural practices. In New Brunswick, like the rest of Canada, the total number of farms is declining, but the average farm size is growing. So we actually have fewer farms, but larger farms. The NFU believes that small and medium scale farms are the way forward. And that's in part because they are more adaptable to change, especially climate change, than larger scale production. You know, there's so many intersections between food and climate. We did a presentation to the Standing Committee on Climate Change and Environmental Stewardship earlier this year. If anyone's interested, you can check it out on the LUDGE website, where we really dive into some of the aspects of how pesticides not only are affecting our climate, but are going to be more toxic as temperature rises. One of my favorite words is holistic. Anyone who knows me will know that I say this a lot, which is the fundamental interconnectedness of all things. And we cannot solve the climate crisis without addressing the farm income crisis, without addressing labor shortages, without addressing social welfare like childcare or basic income, without integrating Indigenous practices and stewardship. To touch on the farm income crisis, in Canada, it is staggering and it's growing. In New Brunswick, from the end of the Depression to the mid-80s, farmers were keeping almost half of every dollar they produced. And from the mid-80s until now, the farmers' share after they pay their bills, which is adjusted for inflation and government subsidies, is approximately 7%. Farmers have been pushed and pressured to be far too reliant on purchased inputs. And by inputs, we mean synthetic chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. As they've become more reliant on these purchased inputs, more of the wealth they create is siphoned off to the bills paid to the chemical companies, fertilizer companies, fuel companies, banks, machinery companies, et cetera. And we can actually see a direct correlation between the increase in agricultural emissions and the decline in farm income. The other aspect of farm income that relates to climate change is that massive debt and inadequate income make farmers hyper vulnerable to climate impacts, such as floods, droughts, and violent storms. Reduction of externally purchased inputs and increased farm and community self-sufficiency will allow for greater farm autonomy and strengthened rural economies that are resilient to climate change. So one of the things that we're working on to help address some of these issues is under the Agricultural Climate Solutions Program, which is a federal program. They have, which is created to help develop and implement farming practices, tackle climate change. And they're developing regional collaboration hubs on farms known as living labs. So farmers and farm groups will be the center of decision-making, innovation, and on-farm activities at each hub. Agriculture climate solutions includes transferring knowledge to other farmers so that they can deploy solutions that are tailored to their region and promote environmental sustainability and resiliency in the agricultural sector. We've just started the process here in New Brunswick, and we're working with 14 other organizations that will look at the best management practices that actually work here in our province. You know, Claire mentioned agroecology, and we really think that governments have to invest in agroecology. We really need a shift to policy change. You know, one of the, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. You know, agroecology, as you know, as Claire mentioned, is a holistic approach, and again, you know, we can't just address some of the farming challenges. We have to address lots of the other challenges that all of the pieces fit together. The NFU has a lot of research in both agricultural and climate issues. And if anyone is interested, I can definitely send some of the reports your way. Our national office has done a report called Imagine If, a vision of near zero emission farm and food system for Canada, which is set in 2030, and also tackling the farm crisis and the climate crisis report. There's some really great 2-page summaries that detail some of the issues that we're currently having with climate change and some of the policy shifts that we need. And I think I have time. I'll kind of quickly go through some of those. So some of the agricultural greenhouse gas emission issues that we have is that we're looking at temperature increases, which could mean the end of many farms. Canada is committed to cutting overall emissions by 30% by 2030. But despite those commitments, the emissions are still going up in agriculture. You know, farm inputs, as we mentioned, we really see as the main area to tackle. And especially since nitrogen use has doubled in Canada since 1993. You know, cattle and livestock production are something that are, you know, almost vilified sometimes in agriculture for climate impact. And we really believe that it has its place in small scale. You know, factory farms are not the answer, and factory farms are, you know, contributing more significantly to emissions and climate change. But if we maximize the benefits of livestock while minimizing emissions, which includes rotational grazing and biodiverse mixed farms, that's really the way forward. That, you know, we don't necessarily all need to transition to vegetarian or vegan diets. Obviously, up to you. You know, healthy carbon-rich soils, as both Claire and Mario mentioned, are key. And we really feel that soil testing has been an issue in Canada that we need to address. We need independent soil tests. And climate solutions can be on-farm, can be farm income solutions. You know, they go hand in hand. And we really have a need for a policy shift, you know, to move our food systems toward sustainability and resilience, which will create higher net incomes and increase the number of farmers stewarding the land. You know, one of the other areas that we look at is replacing fossil fuels with low emission electricity. I know the New Brunswick government just recently released some climate change funding and action plans, and it doesn't really, from my opinion, go into renewable energy very well. So that's something that we're going to have to keep pushing for and keep lobbying on. And just reducing, you know, input use overall, building resilient food systems. And, you know, I really appreciate Food for All and, you know, the situation, the conference that we have here, because it brings together the people around the table who, you know, can make those changes. And one final membership push: if you are not a farmer but are interested in becoming an NFU member, we do have associate memberships. And if you're a farmer, you can obviously become an NFU member. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. So yeah, these were 3 really excellent talks. Maybe we'll start asking if there are any questions in the audience. And I've got a few questions maybe to get us started off. We're going through a municipal reform, right? And one of the recommendations, or one of the elements that has been raised in the white paper that was just released, is about statements of public interest. And so these are province-wide policies that would be implemented at the planning level throughout New Brunswick. And there's some talk about integrating agricultural elements into that. So I'm curious about if you could make recommendations to the government about what sorts of considerations should be made for farmers and small scale farms, probably in particular. What would you recommend? And feel free to jump in, whoever has something to say on that.
So I have a very big concern about farmland protection as a policy and not put into legislation. So I've had issues in my own community about people soil mining right on the edge of the confluence of 2 rivers. You know, there's all kinds of bird species there that need to be protected. And yeah, they're just strip mining it and they're going right to the edge of the riparian zone. And I think like in 60 years, we're not going to have that topsoil anymore. And the amount of like economic gain to the community that comes from that is just really, it's so marginal. It's not even worth bothering, in my opinion. So I would really, really like to see a harder stance on that, and also see communities have more control over their land use planning. Like that was really the crux for me of the most important thing in rural reform, was that we have a say about what happens around us.
I was going to mention something very similar along those same lines as what Amy was just talking about, and that is the importance of maintaining arable farmland, and of course preserving topsoil is one of the key elements there. But I think a lot of it comes down to zoning as well, and just as a specific example, as farmland relates to development and rezoning and restructuring of land. I mean, there is a lot of farmland in New Brunswick, but of course it's a finite resource, and if we're not forward thinking about protecting that, it's definitely at risk. And so my one example is the farm that I work at. So Hayes Farm is right in the middle of a residential neighborhood in Fredericton. And it's basically, it's an estate at this point. And we'd love to see the management of that land and the transfer of that land to a trust held by an Indigenous organization. But the significant issue that we're having to work with right now is that there's the city of Fredericton has a neighborhood planned for the land that we're on, and if that land were to change hands, then the zoning flips and it's no longer farmland, it's medium and high density residential. So that's something that we really need to be aware of and vocal about protecting.
Great. And kind of to that point, so I mean, my sense is that Hayes Farm's location probably also gets people involved in farming. Just the fact that it's kind of the proximity and the accessibility. So I'm wondering how else can we get more citizens involved in agriculture? About 4% of New Brunswick's area is dedicated to agriculture, and a large portion of that is intensive agriculture, like in the potato belt and some livestock operations. So I'm curious, how do we get more small scale farms started? Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, personally, I think education is very key. Starting in schools, letting kids understand that there's a potential for earning an income and earning your living as a farmer. Right now, the popular culture idea about farming is that, well, if you're a C student, well, you can go into farming. But farming is a business, it's an enterprise. It's you're an entrepreneur, and it's a very important part of our economy and our social structure. You know, farming is should be valued as high as doctors and lawyers, right? Very, very important work that we're doing for the stability of our society in general. I'd like to see, you know, some incentives for small enterprises, small market gardens opening up in people's backyards and in empty lots. Some incentives to help those small farmers to bring their product to market. I don't know if you know, we set up some kind of delivery system or a collective or a cooperative or something like that to get you know, to get that product to market where people want it. There's a high demand for organic, naturally grown produce. People want that for their, you know, they value it for their diet. So it's a very important and very valuable product that we could produce right here at home. Small families, you know, with a single income, well, the second parent could, you know, run a market garden in their backyard and top up their income, right? So there's a lot of potential. There's just lack of imagination, lack of education, and I think a little bit of guidance on that part could make a very large difference.
Thanks, Mario. I see Jill's raising her hand. Suzanne, I'll give you the mic in just a second, but yeah, go ahead, Jill.
Trying to be a very good student. So I wanted to add, you know, thinking about cities and the way that we plan, like local planning has come up, and the way that we zone different areas in our municipal spaces, but thinking about mixed use zoning and ensuring that our green spaces are saved and cherished. I know here in Moncton, there's been a number of discussions and debates about development and what does that look like when we have a big football field. Well, we need a lot of parking because we drive a lot of cars here in Moncton. And so then the debate becomes, you know, there's a real big push to remove those green spaces, but how might we look at those green spaces as amazing community assets where, you know, food can be grown. So I just wanted to add that in. That mixed use piece as well is just in allowing folks to have those smaller market stands or smaller food retail spaces. There are a lot of barriers that are wrapped up into our local bylaws.
So I see Amy's raised her hand, and I assume it's to respond to that. So yeah, we'll get to that before Suzanne again.
I'll make it really quick because it's a whole discussion unto itself. But one thing that I think we should think more about in New Brunswick is composting and the scale of composting. So I've done some research, and at large scales, and I guess I would say it's quite a concern because methane is 18 to 20% more destructive to the ozone than CO2, which is our general focus. But large scale composting has to be done hot to prevent human pathogens from getting back into the soil. There's a lot of fossil fuels used in that. And there's a massive shortage of compost for farmers. You know, when you start spreading out like a ton per acre, we can't build that ourselves on our own properties. So I think we have to look at maybe like neighborhood scale or community scale composting rather than massive infrastructure setups. But it should be, in my opinion, something that we have more forums and more discussions on in the future. Thank you.
That's a great point. Thanks, Amy. So Suzanne, you had something to respond?
Just in terms of the original question of, you know, how do we increase the number of small scale farms? And I think one of the key things is to not let the small scale farms that we have fail. You know, we have to support them, you know, and maybe if you don't have the time or capacity or ability to do your own garden, you know, it's like Claire said, you know, it's forging those connections with your farmers, whether it's through a farmer's market, which is, you know, a great place to access local food, although can be difficult to get to depending on, you know, the ruralness of where you live, but or, you know, a CSA share is another great way to support a farm. but yeah, I think supporting the ones that we have will, you know, keep that space available for more to come in and more to grow.
And maybe to the point of supporting farmers, if we get back to the climate change question. So adapting and mitigating climate change can be a lot of work, as well as, you know, farmers already have a huge burden of work and often live from year to year, depending on the weather and all kinds of factors. So maybe how can local governments or provincial governments help farmers, because I think you've identified that they can be part of the solution for both mitigation and maybe even adaptation. And that was kind of a topic that was at the recent NBEN conference. So how can our farmers get the help that they need, and what is the type of help that they would need for making these changes?
Excuse me, access to markets is a pretty significant one. And the rules and the regulations that are currently in place is often, the regionality and locality plays a lot into it. So crossing borders, including provincial borders, can be a struggle. And a lot of the rules that are in place are tied to income. So, you know, sometimes easier, sometimes harder if you make less. But then, you know, once you cross that threshold and are becoming more self-sufficient and earning more income, then there's a lot more barriers strapped on in order to continue doing what you're doing. And the accessibility of many markets and the opportunity to help scale up your operation are very difficult to access. So, you know, a lot of the larger supermarkets and grocery stores are just inaccessible to the smaller grower.
That's great. Thanks, Claire. And kind of related to that, so Mario mentioned a lot of BMPs, and so did Suzanne, and you know, these have been talked about. If we're talking about low till or no till and rotational grazing and biodiverse rich farms, have been talked about for 15, 20 years. What's the cause of like slow uptake, especially I think you mentioned that industrial operations are kind of more slow on that, and they kind of depend on inputs and don't kind of use the ecosystem approach. So curious what your perspectives are on that, and why even I think in some cases small farms tend to kind of use these kind of the methods that they've been using for a few decades, and they're kind of still doing that, and why aren't they changing?
I think that question was directed to me, I think, right? You kind of glitched out a little bit for a second there. I didn't get your whole question there.
So it wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but you gave examples, for example, the no-till versus conventional tillage.
Yeah, no-till works on a small scale, but on the large scale, in order to do no-till on the broad acre, you have to use glyphosates in order to kill your weeds and stuff like that to prepare your thing on a you know. So large scale agriculture almost demands an industrial approach. So to me, it's like you know, taking up the corners of the production, you know. So broad acre for potatoes and for wheat. Well, we're not producing wheat around here, but people need their broccoli and they need their beans and they need their corn and they need all other things like that we can produce on a smaller scale. That we don't need to have those broad acre approaches. More hands on the land. That's what we need in order to make soil work and function. One person can manage about an acre. So for every acre we got, we need an agricultural person managing that land, and that kind of steps outside. You see, the smaller operations kind of look to the big boys for some guidance, and well, if it's good enough for them, it's got to be the right way to go, right? Well, it's just that there's options for the smaller scale that are much lighter touch on the lands and are much more beneficial. It's just a matter of we don't have enough examples, practical examples, in order to guide people that they can take an example. How does it work, and how can I apply that on my property? You know, so I think it's just a matter of having some examples out there and shining a light on them and giving the people the option to choose. I feel that a small farming operation that's more leaner, greener, is more profitable for the agriculture, for the enterprise. And I think just going on an economics of that, you know, where you make more money doing it smaller scale, you keep more of that profit in your pocket. I think that's a strong argument for entrepreneurs who want to engage in this industry.
Great. Thanks for that answer. And I'm cognizant of the fact that we're getting near to the end of time. So Jill is recommending a final question, which is to ask each of you what you want to get loud about. And so maybe a last plug for something, and then I'll pass it on to Jill. So Suzanne, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. I think we need to get loud about agroecology. I think we need a full shift in all systems, change to a holistic future at every level.
Great. Claire?
Fruit production in New Brunswick. I adore fruit, and one of the things that got me really excited about farming and gardening is cantaloupe, and that grows so well here. And I think that if there's something like that like gets you excited and piques your interest, pursue it, go for it, and see where it leads you.
Fantastic. And Mario?
I want to get loud about Earth. We named our planet Earth for a reason. We value soil. We value Earth, good, clean, fertile Earth. So we need to take that into heart and to reapply it to our society, revalue it the way it ought to be. It's the basis of our economy. It's the basis of our cultures, and it's the basis of our future. So you know, let's get loud about good Earth.
Fantastic. And I see in the chat Amy adding in that community-owned and community and cooperative solutions for sure. Great points, everyone. So Jill, passing it to you.
Thanks. And age before, to me, can I ask you, as moderator, I know you've got a lot of background in climate change and adaptation. What do you want to get loud about?
I think it's about more systems thinking. In general, I think we tend to take everything piecemeal and think that, okay, this is a problem, this is another problem, but there are solutions that are all kind of interconnected into that. And you know, I think a lot have been raised in the talks talking about social justice and societal problems in terms of employment or poverty alleviation, and how those can all be integrated into maybe agricultural solutions and eventually into the climate change solution with carbon storage, and really it's a large paradigm shift. So yeah, that's what I want to get loud about.
Thanks. And yeah, we really can't break these things down into separate pieces in order to respond to these issues. It's all connected, isn't it? So I want to say thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Waliwan and Walalieg for this really amazing food and climate talk. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And before we go to break, we're a little bit over time, but I really wanted to just take one quick minute to share Food for All's most recently published document, An Eater's Guide to Climate Action, un guide d'action en faveur de l'action climatique. So An Eater's Guide to Climate Action is really the first entry point for Food for All into food and climate related work. And the guide, while 32 pages long, it really tries to pull together a whole bunch of basic info for eaters to understand the basics of food and climate change. It's certainly not the end point, but it's a start. And we will be soon publishing a facilitation booklet to go along with An Eater's Guide to Climate Action, so that, I'm sure we're all aware that conversations around climate, conversations around food and climate, they can become really challenging and really divisive at times. And so we're set to launch a facilitation booklet in the coming months to help guide that process and to help us think a little bit more broadly, embrace the nuances and each other through these really tough times. It's there's a lot to think about, and there are many solutions for us to make change. And so I'll ask that one of our teammates, whether it be here or in the lobby, that will share the link to order physical copies of the guide, because I don't only have these 2 here in my office. We've got a number of boxes and we really want to spread the love. So we've got a simple Google order form. If you'd like to have physical copies, we will get those out to you in the mail. And so we will move into our break period now. Again, if you would like to click on the lobby and go into the break, you can wait in the break room, and we'll hang until our next school food session starts in just another few minutes. But please get up, go stretch, look out the window, have a coffee or a water. And thanks so much for joining this first Food and Climate Chat this morning. See you soon.